Okay, well, that was fun. We're here at the Barclays Center. After a long night, started at 5 o'clock. We finally got to the main event, and it's over in about 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Deontay Wilder, KO1 Dominic Breazeale. What was that you just saw in the Wikipedia entry for Dominic Breazeale?
Somebody had updated it to murdered as the loss type, and I think
Yeah.
that might not be an exaggeration.
Yeah, I don't think that's an official scoring type in the record books, but very descriptive. So, are you surprised by what happened tonight?
Not surprised. I feel like everybody knows Wilder's MO by now, how he wins, and generally it's by KO or he's going to get a draw or something. So
Yeah, I was surprised by how fast it played out. If you look at, Wilder has a ton of first-round knockouts over the course of his career. I mean, he has 40 fights. He had a lot of lower-level fights early on in his career. For the most part, since he's stepped up, I mean, if you look at even the Gerald Washington fight, Chris Arreola fight, I think the Gerald Washington fight lasted 5 rounds. Some people had Wilder down even. Look at the Chris Arreola fight. Molina, I mean, all of these, Spilka, a lot of these fights
Spilka
took a little while to get going. Deontay Wilder was behind and hurt in the Luis Ortiz fight, and he spent basically the entire Tyson Fury fight, playing catch-up, basically, behind and then catching up to a draw as a result of 2 knockdowns. This fight did not play out that way.
it did not at all.
He was landing heavy shots very early on. Could not have felt good for Breazeale. Breazeale seemed to land one good power shot, which got Wilder to slow down a little bit, but then it was all over 2 minutes in.
Yes.
That knockout is going to be all over the internet. I mean, that is viral, written all over it. I think it's going to be on SportsCenter. I mean, it's already, blowing up the internet as we speak from the bit that we've seen. So, said not really surprised that's his MO, but I mean, do you have any key takeaways from this?
So my key thought when I was coming into this today, I wanted to watch some Breazeale tape because I just hadn't seen him in a while. So I watched the AJ fight just because we would have a common opponent, and Ugono, that fight as well.
Like
and then
Ugono,
Uzono. But either way, like if you look at a lot of Breazeale's fights, he's kind of a grinder. He tends to win. If he's getting a TKO, he takes some punishment, and then he winds up, stopping his opponent. In the AJ fight, it took AJ, I think it was 7 before he stopped him. So, and I know it's not a fair argument to make the comparison, but Wilder just stopped him in 1 with just 1 shot.
Yeah.
So, take from that what you will. I'm not saying that Wilder would just drop anybody, but AJ, I don't know, it just adds more fuel to that fire about, AJ versus Wilder.
Sure. Definitely add some heat to that rivalry. Yeah, regarding the takeaway, I mean, I think it's funny to look at it that way. I mean, I think most people would say there's a clear top 3 at heavyweight. A lot of people have Deontay Wilder number 3 out of that 3. I mean, a lot of people scored Tyson Fury winning their fight. AJ still has the best win out of all of them with the KO win over Klitschko. Well, it sort of depends on how you want to look at it because Fury beat him first. But, a lot of people have AJ number 1 just sort of by default. Fury above Wilder. So you can sort of mix and match. But, I mean, I think this is a really fun result. I mean, I don't know how much it means that he knocked out, Breazeale in 1 and Joshua did it in 7.
Yes.
I think it does mean he's the hardest puncher on the planet and a historically hard-punching heavyweight. I mean, I think for the next 50 years when people are talking about the hardest puncher in heavyweight history, his name is going to be on a very short list.
Yes.
I think there's no question about that.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's speak about that very specifically. Do you take anything from the first round knockout versus the 7th round knockout that Joshua had?
Well, the thing is, you can take away something that we've already known to mirror your sentiment. We already know he has tremendous, historic, one hand, knockout power. We got a little bit of a windmill. One other takeaway that I was looking for was for him to be a little bit more disciplined, he being Wilder, and to see maybe a little bit more boxing technique. And I know that's hard, and it's hard to kind of harp on that in a 1-round fight. But he did get a little wild there when he had Breazeale in the corner. He got a little bit windmilly, but he got out of it. He clinched and then kind of reset. So I was, it's too short of a time to kind of like.
I kind of laugh, not to interrupt, but it's like, it's funny to compare the windmilling in this fight, was there, but to like the Gerald Washington fight,
yes,
or like. I'm trying to remember what fight that was, where he was literally doing kind of like a rabbit hop while he was throwing his helicopter punches.
Yes.
He's come a long way.
Yeah,
I think
he's
it's
definitely
worth
getting
giving
better.
him credit. I mean, I believe he's 33, but I think he's still improving. His camp was very confident coming into this fight. I mean, there's always some bravado, but, Mark Breland, his co-trainer, former world champion, great fighter in his own right, he's usually very soft-spoken. I mean, anyone who's spoken to him, at press events or at any other time, I mean, he's not the guy who's out talking. And when you talk to him, usually you get pretty candid answers. And, he said this is going to be a 2-round fight. So it ended up being even faster than that. So I think the Team Wilder knew what they had in front of him, was that Breazeale was in some ways kind of a worse version of what Wilder is in every way. I mean, he's a power puncher, he has a high knockout percentage, but not as athletic, not as fast, not as good as staying away from punches, as hard of a puncher. He landed a good shot in the first round, but I think Team Wilder didn't think they had much to worry about here. I personally, I don't know. It's, again, the 7 rounds versus the 1 round. I mean, I don't take a whole lot away from it. I mean, Joshua's been more cautious at times. The Parker fight went the distance, and I think a lot of people were surprised about that. The Takam fight went 10 and was sort of not very pleasing TKO stoppage. The ref kind of jumped in. I think a lot of people were surprised that went that way. But Joshua's a big guy, a bad man.
Yes.
I don't know. I don't think this is really that predictive of whatever would happen when Wilder fights him. But so going ahead to that very quickly before we get to some of the undercard. So we've got Joshua fighting in a few weeks. Also have Fury fighting in a few weeks.
Yes.
Do you think this puts some pressure on those guys as far as their performances? Do you think we're going to still be talking about this in a month? Do you think either of them is going to be able to steal some thunder from this with their performances? I don't know. Just any thought on that?
Possibly. And then in the kind of like post-fight, while Wilder was in the ring, he was asked, of course, about a lot of other contenders at heavyweight. They had King Kong Ortiz randomly
I was very surprised
in
by
the
that,
ring,
because I think a lot of people have indicated that Konaki was probably going to be the next fight.
Yeah,
so.
and I know what I'm anticipating is that Wilder will need another fight. It won't be against. And he even insinuated, that these things take time, and they're talking about they being, the individual camps of each of those top 3 that you mentioned. They're talking, but it's going to take time to get that fight together. So what I'm thinking is he's going to need another, not stay busy, but another fight probably in maybe in the fall sometime. Maybe we'll get another one in this year. And I would agree that I was thinking that it would be another, somebody stepping up to the world-class level, somebody wanting a title shot, and maybe not a King Kong rematch, although that fight was tremendous, and I would want to see that again. I don't know about you, but it's strange. But I don't think anything that Fury or AJ could do, or what I think they would do, would kind of, I don't know, like make the everybody's already salivating for this fight. I would just hope that we would get it by next year, and again, hoping that people don't lose. So as long as we don't get some sort of crazy upset, that I would be more kind of. I'm not saying that will happen, but I would be more worried about that. But yeah, everybody should just do what they're supposed to do, and then hopefully all these different sides of the street can come together, or at least 2 of them to make a fight. Sometime next year, early next year.
Yeah, I'll sort of answer. I mean, you sort of touched on a few different topics.
Oh, sorry.
There. So,
yeah, I'm wandering.
This is neither the time nor place for a boxing discussion after a fight. Yeah. So regarding, the different pieces. Regarding Ortiz, to say that specifically, I think Wilder would come in as a pretty heavy favorite to Ortiz. I mean, Ortiz... there are all the memes about Ortiz is old. I personally think that Ortiz is the age that he's listed.
60? Or I mean, sorry.
Yeah. But again, it's like, fill in the joke here, about his age. But it's like I personally believe he's the age that's reported. But even then, he's old and he hasn't looked great in his last couple fights.
Yeah,
Wilder did knock him out when they fought the first time. Ortiz caught Wilder, but Wilder put him down. Put him down. He got hurt by Ortiz, didn't go down, and then Wilder knocked him out. I mean, still in the balance of the firefight, favored Wilder, and I would favor him even more so in the next fight. I mean, I think, even being a little bit older is not going to help. Ortiz hasn't looked great in his last few fights.
True.
Didn't have a great fight against Travis Kaufman, went the distance in his last fight against an opponent he should have knocked out early, you'd think. So, so I don't know. I feel like strategically I could see them doing that fight because Wilder did get badly hurt in that fight. And I feel like it would open the door for AJ to fight Ortiz and just do what Wilder did tonight to Breazeale, just like knock him out early. So I feel like they kind of want to finish that business. Ortiz did turn down the Joshua fight, so I think that seems likely to me that they'll do that.
The inactivity will hurt him too because now he's missing a fight, whereas everybody else Ortiz.
Right? Yeah. I believe he fought on the Wilder Fury undercard, right? So now Wilder will have had one more fight since then. So, regarding you were talking, something I was asking before, and you touched on as well, was like the Wilder or the Fury and Joshua elements of this. And I think everyone wants the Fury and Joshua fight. I mean, it was interesting looking at the Reddit traffic this week because you had a lot of casual fans who are interested in this, who aren't interested in a lot of other boxing, but they're general sports fans who are interested in heavyweight boxing. And, everyone was just salivating. I posted some Wilder clips. I was being a little cheeky, but, just reminding people he actually did do well in the Fury fight at times. Fury, when he got knocked down in the 9th, was taunting Wilder, and then Wilder knocked him down. In the 12th, again, it's like Fury got up. That was what a lot of people took away from it the first time, but that was a thunderous knockdown. And credit to Wilder for landing that in the 12th. So, when I was posting these clips, I was expecting some backlash from UK fans saying, and I did get a little bit of that, but the overwhelming sentiment was just, we want that fight.
Yes.
And I think that's a little bit more on people's minds, I think, the rematch, but I think people want the Joshua fight too. I certainly do also. I think realistically it's not going to happen. Fury signed with a rival promoter on the eve of being able to sign the paperwork for the fight.
Yes.
That doesn't make it seem like it's going to happen.
Yeah.
Sort of on the flip side, like Wilder could have signed with DAZN, was offered a huge offer. That would have moved the Joshua fight closer to happening. He didn't. He stayed with his current team. So it looks like, again, that fight is not moving closer. So I think it's more likely we'll see in-house fights from these guys for at least a year, maybe 2.
Ooh.
And well see what happens.
Not 2. Don't do it to us.
It's just realistic.
That's a little bit of over-marination,
the Ortiz and Kanaki fights are there. I mean, those are almost certainly going to be Wilder's next 2 fights. I mean, that's been talked about behind the scenes. And those are pretty good fights. I mean, the Ortiz fight makes sense. And, the Kanaki fight makes sense. He's built a strong case. One last thing before I send back to you. I had said, what do you think the guys are going to be able to do, Joshua and Fury, in their next few fights? Are they going to be able to put on a similarly dramatic performance? And, that's something I'm super interested with. Fury, that's sort of the easier one to answer. I mean, when he fought Sefer Seferi, he fought, a 12-round kind of nothing fight, when he had those 2 tune-up fights. So unless he can come up with some kind of knockout, I mean, the UK fans love him outboxing no-hopers.
Yeah.
I don't know how much US audiences are going to care. I mean, it's sort of a weird thing of him fighting these low-level opponents on ESPN+. It's like... I don't know how much more that builds his brand. I don't know how excited people are going to be by that. To go over to Joshua, I think he has a really big opportunity in Ruiz. I think Ruiz's stock is at an all-time high. He had a good performance on Fox. Really, I mean, it's amazing. In the aftermath of that, he didn't call out Wilder or AJ or Fury. He called out Adam Kanaki. I mean, it's sort of it's funny how relatively low the bar seemed to be for that fight.
Yeah.
But he looked good, and it's one of those things that's like, he had a very close fight with Joseph Parker. He could have won. He looked good again, got good exposure in that Fox fight, and suddenly he's fighting AJ. So I think people, if AJ stops him, I think people will be impressed. He only has that one fight to Joseph Parker, which was razor thin. He didn't stop Joseph Parker. So I think any version of an AJ stoppage there looks really good. I think people will be potentially, depending on how it looks, they could be more impressed than the Breazeale fight. So I think that will be interesting because, both of those guys are getting big. It's AJ's first fight in the U.S. Fury, again, it's his first fight with ESPN. So I think it will be interesting to look back in a month. I mean, Stephen A. Smith was here tonight, which is kind of weird. I mean, ESPN, I think, is making a bigger commitment to this since they have Fury. Wilder was on a lot of their air this week. So I think that is going to be an interesting thing to look back a month from now. I mean, Wilder sort of said to those guys, the ball's in your court. I just did this. What are you guys going to do? So I don't know. I answered a mouthful now. So thoughts on any of those topics?
No, and I agree with you. I'm less so comparing the future AJ and the future Fury performance versus Wilder, as opposed to comparing them within themselves. So
Okay.
I'm very interested in how you have phrased that, because I do think AJ, if he does get a stoppage, whether it be TKO or maybe a thunderous knockout, not necessarily comparing it to Wilder, but comparing it to Fury, because you'll have that footage, you'll have that hunger. As you said, it'll be in the U.S. We'll hopefully be there. We'll see.
Just
thinking about that
if
now.
the credentials come through, we'll deliver a similar video.
We'll have a
few weeks from now.
Video there. Ruiz shocks the world. Tentative title, but I'm more to what your point is, that Fury is definitely, like, while I enjoy watching him box and he is more sweet science than he is, just kind of raw dynamite. That won't generate a lot of like headlines or a lot of viral footage like Wilder generates tonight, and then AJ will possibly generate somewhat in his fight here in a couple weeks. So I would feel that in comparison that probably Fury has the lowest ceiling as far as raising his stock with that fight, whereas Wilder, even though you might argue about the opponent, but it is a common opponent and it is a very dramatic finish. So he raises his stock, and then AJ will probably raise his stock in his fight. So that, to me, pushes them two closer together. But again, with the politics and everything, who knows? And please don't be 2 years. But in boxing, it could be.
Those are such good fights. Those are such good fights. Hopefully we get them. Anything more to say about the main event, or we want to talk about the undercard quickly?
We could go to undercards.
Sure. So let's go work our way down. So Gary Russell Jr. Key takeaways. So just the result. Gary Russell Jr. Stopped Kiko Martinez.
Stopped Kiko Martinez, shredded him up. Some of his combos were a little bit of shoe shine, but he was landing at the end of some of those hard, for the most part, or a couple hard shots were always in there. He looked good. He looked fast. He looked sharp. The call out to Leo Santa Cruz is interesting. I would love to see that. I would maybe even fly to LA for that, but or wherever they want to do it. But that would be amazing. And then what I found interesting was, what did you think of the possible call out with
Tank?
With Tank and the move up and whatnot. I feel like that's something new. The Russells, whether it be Gary Russell, or one of his brothers, are always fighting here at Barclays all the time. So I feel like he gets interviewed a lot, and I feel like that's something, a new wrinkle that I haven't heard before.
I've heard him mention that. I mean, I listened to the Showtime Boxing podcast this week, and they had an interview with Russell. And something that was interesting, they pointed out and talked about with him, was he turned pro at 126 long time ago, I think like 2009 or something. I don't quote me on that, but a long time ago. And he's still fighting at 126. I mean, when do you ever hear that for a fighter to fight for that long in the same division, the division they turned pro? I think he's ripe to move up. Regarding Leo Santa Cruz, that was actually sort of reversed. That was interesting to me, because Russell is sort of he was calling out Lomachenko for a while, which that rematch was never going to happen. Which to me seemed like that was a way for him to not fight Leo Santa Cruz. So now suddenly going into this fight, he's saying Leo Santa Cruz is avoiding me. The powers that be at the PBC, he's sort of, without naming names, the powers that be at the PBC, he sort of made some cryptic statement about, I made a call to the powerful, he's like alluding to Al Heyman, saying they don't want this fight to happen, I want the fight. So we'll see. Look, boxing fans have wanted that fight for like 3 years. It's just becoming exhausting. It's sort of like, similar parallel situation to a lot of people being frustrated with Spence, that he wasn't getting like the Porter, Danny Garcia, Keith Thurman fights for like the last 3 years. I mean, those fights are suddenly, rolling out.
Yeah.
Hopefully we got those fights. And, again, the Gervonta Davis fight at 130, that's so natural. I mean, everyone is saying that. Like, Leo Santa Cruz has talked about moving up to 130. Jesus Cuellar had talked about moving up, or did move up, and Davis knocked him out. Maros was going to fight Davis, and looks like that.
Oof.
Yeah, so...
Don't do it, man.
Yeah.
I had a detached retina. You don't want that.
That seems like a pretty natural road. All of those guys seem to be kind of outgrowing the division. And, I think all roads will end with Tank. So whether those guys fight each other... I mean, we never even got to see Gary Russell Jr. against Mares,
True.
which... Mares has said he wants that fight. If not Tank, then maybe Russell Jr. So I like all those fights, Gary Russell Jr. is so talented. He looked great tonight.
Yeah.
Kiko Martinez had gotten blown up by Leo Santa Cruz a few years ago, but then he had a sort of competitive decision loss to Josh Warrington, who then went on to beat Lee Selby and Carl Frampton. So 126 is a little bit of a mess, and we're just talking about the PBC side of the street. I mean, not to ignore Top Rank. It's just it's unrealistic that Oscar Valdez fights or Shakur Stevenson fights would happen, but certainly I love those also. They could happen.
Yeah.
It's just
I just want to see Gary Russell just fight.
Fight
before next year, this time.
When he's
fight
fighting,
anybody.
he looks impressive. I mean, I really enjoyed his Jojo Diaz fight last year. That was a very good performance. And tonight, again, it's like Kiko Martinez is not a high-level opponent, but it was like Russell looked so good.
Yeah.
I mean, he could not have looked more impressive.
Yeah, and props to Kiko for bringing it, because he could have.
Oh yeah,
it got bad early, but
just go in survival mode, or
Kiko was there to
quit
fight
between rounds or something.
Yeah,
he kept coming forward. He was getting beaten up. So credit to him. I mean, that's what
huge credit.
When there's a B-side, that's what you want to, decided B-side. That's what you want to see.
Yeah.
Any thoughts about the first fight, Argenis Mendes versus Juan Geraldo? Is it Juan
Geraldez?
Geraldez.
Yeah, Geraldez.
Yeah.
Geraldez, the TMT prospect.
Right.
I was expecting, much like most of boxing, somebody get fed to somebody, or A versus B. He needed some. I wanted to see some more volume from him. He did put his foot on the gas a couple times, but he was getting caught, and I'm not sure if this is kind of. I feel like this is probably his TV or at least Showtime main card debut, and it didn't go according to plan, which a lot of things do with people that are coming up. So maybe he took a little bit too large of a step up, but he might need to go back to the lab and work some things out, because he's lucky to get out of here with that draw.
Yeah, I think Steve Farhood actually had it narrowly for him. I had it for Mendes by I think 1 round.
Yeah.
So it was that type of fight. I mean,
it
was close,
exactly.
Could have gone either way. I think a draw is just about right.
Yeah.
Geraldez has fought on about this level. Like, I've seen him fight a few times. He fought on the televised prelim to Mayweather-McGregor, I want to say.
Okay, prelim. Okay.
Fought on a PBC on Fox card a few months ago. So, I mean, he's been around, and he's always looked at this level. And, I was I was sort of trying to... my sort of pithy comment about the fight, I was working over in my head. It's like when you see a prospect coming up, you're always wondering, when they're still undefeated, like, are they going to reach the superstar level? Are they going to reach, the world class? Sort of where are they going to plateau? What level are they going to reach? And it's like, with fighting Argenis Mendes, like, he's a gatekeeper type opponent. Robert Easter Jr. is really the only one to get a decisive win over him. But, he has wins and losses, always at the world level. And, this is a gatekeeper opponent. This was a chance where Geraldez could say, I can reach that world championship level. I could reach potentially the superstar level. And tonight it looked like his level is being the next Argenis Mendes. Like, that's his level. Like, he seems like he's sort of a future gatekeeper for the division.
Yes.
He might win a title eventually, if there ends up being a vacant title or something. But it's hard to see him really becoming a dominant champion. Kind of seems like this is the level we'll be at, fighting around the world-class level, but not really having the potential to reach the dominant world-class level. He's not super young. I don't know if he has that much room to improve. He's a TMT fighter, fights out of the Mayweather gym. He shouldn't be getting surprised by what Argenis Mendes is doing in there.
Yes.
And it seemed like it was the first time he had seen this type of again, Argenis Mendez is a gritty veteran. He's stuck around. He's a real gatekeeper for that division. But I was looking for more out of him tonight. I mean, there were times, there were rounds,
Flashes.
there were minutes at a time where he looked very impressive. But even when he at his core is like a boxer. He wants to stick and move. He wants to be moving and jabbing, and then set up power shots out of that posture. And even when he was moving and jabbing and seemed like the fight was going the way he wanted, Mendez was able to land shots.
Yeah, he was catching them.
It was like he is surprisingly porous defense. So, pretty disappointing. Any further thoughts on that fight? Other fights?
No, the YouTube, Facebook stream, we had another Russell on it. The only other thing, there was Alfonso versus who was his opponent?
Kaladze.
Kaladze. Yeah, that's another case where I thought Alfonso was kind of being set up a little bit to win, but Kaladze, again, another gritty veteran, kind of grinding out to another draw. So we had several draws here. I had a couple thoughts just about the attendance. Did you notice initially I was a little bit worried because they had the upper decks open, as you could kind of see behind us. Well, I guess behind the board, but there weren't a lot of people in here initially. But I feel like it filled in. Did you feel that by
I think they announced the attendance was around 13,000.
Okay, that's good. It caught up.
Good. I mean, it's sort of funny. It's like AJ, Mr. I want to say, is it? No, Carl Froch is Mr. 80K. I don't remember how many they got for the anyway, a lot more than 14,000.
Multiple times more than this place will even hold.
I don't know. I mean, that is one, I was talking about, are Fury and AJ going to be able to impress in their U.S. debuts? If AJ sells out Madison Square Garden, in a city where Wilder's fought about 10 times, like, that's not a good look for Wilder. Yeah. But overall, it was a good Barclays Center crowd. It was more of a good Barclays Center crowd than it was a good historic heavyweight crowd, which is what we're seeing in some AJ fights. Yes. So I think that's definitely a footnote to the situation. But I don't know. That's something like we were talking about earlier in the evening before we started recording was the Barclays Center. The PBC's built up such a strong audience here. There's a lot of repeat business, and even in the lower level cards, it's like the minimum they do is around 8,000. Yeah. But it's sort of like, 'cause they have a high floor, but also kind of a low ceiling. I think the record is around 16,000 for Thurman, Danny Garcia. I know that was the record for boxing here. I think it was around 16,000. But it seems like they kind of range the lowest level is around 8,000. The normal level is around 10 to 12,000. Yeah. And then the bigger ones start to get up above the 12,000 mark. So this is definitely one of the bigger ones they've done. But I think I was really looking to see, coming out of that Fury fight, seeing all the mainstream exposure Wilder's gotten, if he could sell out. I'm just still waiting for someone to sell at the Barclays Center in boxing. True. Hasn't happened yet. And, I think it does come down to the level of opponent. I mean, it was a first round knockout.
And the undercards, too.
It wasn't a stacked undercard at all. Yeah. You had the Gary Russell brothers, but that's going to bring in something.
Yeah, that brings up the DC, Maryland, DMV people.
But there's probably a lot of overlap with the Wilder crowd anyway. So overall it was good. How do you feel about coming out here, going through all of this for a first round knockout? I mean, overall, you say you got your we're credentialed, but money's worth, so to speak, for the evening.
I feel like the crowd was into it, so it was actually a pretty good build. As far as the Geraldes fight was kind of the second draw of the night. On the YouTube stream, there was a draw previous, so the crowd was a little bit it's a New York crowd, so we get a little bit ornery when things don't go that way. Russell definitely brought the excitement up.
I think people were definitely into the Russell fight.
Yeah, into the Russell fight. So we got a stoppage, a lot of flashy, a lot of action, and then we get all the way up, to the Wilder fight and the crazy entrance, and then just, bombs being thrown and an explosion and early night. So I don't think anybody was too disappointed in that. That's what they came to see. I don't think anyone
was disappointed. I think we were both here for Wilder Stavern 2, right? Wilder's last first-round knockout. And similar to that, I feel like everyone feels like they got their money's worth. I mean, I felt, similar types of fight and how that, both first round knockouts. Like, I feel like the crowd was on their feet for like 10 minutes after the knockout.
Yes.
No one left. I mean, you look around. Sometimes you look around, people are gone as the result.
It'll look as empty as behind us.
Yeah.
5 minutes after.
And people were on their feet. I mean, they wanted to hear what Wilder had to say. They wanted to see the replay. So, yeah, I think everyone is probably happy with what happened tonight.
Yeah.
And, one last note, there was a lot of talk that, Wilder had not signed a deal with DAZN, a big deal that was offered to him. It's hard to say how the math will play out, but his basic reasoning, and I asked him and Shelley Finkel about this on the media conference call, to talk about this notion of betting on themselves. They were offered a much lesser amount of money to face Anthony Joshua a year ago. Those negotiations ended up falling through, but, here a year later they were offered significantly more. You'd have to think that, the snowball keeps getting bigger.
Yes.
That, with performances like this, he keeps building his reputation. Those fights are just getting bigger and bigger. So, I think credit to him for continuing to bet on himself. I mean, the Wilder train keeps on rolling.
Yeah, keeps rolling. And if we get King Kong rematch, then if we get a Fury rematch even more, you have to say that.
A Fury rematch. Oh, my God.
Please. Yeah. And if he comes out of that with at least a draw or better. Let's say he wins this next time, happens to drop Fury.
Well,
or
if he wins.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. This is hypothetical.
Yeah,
Let's say if he wins, then that snowball is going to be massive. It's going to be an avalanche of the amount of money. And then he looks like a genius. But let's say the flip side, if you have a misstep or a hiccup somewhere along the way, like Fury wins or whatnot, then we'd have to see what the money looks like then. But I'm not watching everybody's pockets, but I think it's a good personal choice. Bet on yourself and see how the chips lie.
Well, I had fun tonight. Okay. So signing off, guys.
All right, Sunday
Hope
Puncher.
You enjoyed it as much as we did. Yeah, Sunday Puncher. Patreon. Shout out to Leo in the newsletter.
Yeah, shout out to
the
Babs
boys on Instagram.
One day
Babs
he'll be here.
was here tonight.
Yeah.
Did you end up being able to get a shot of him, or
No, I got busy and then I couldn't find him over there. So shout out to everybody in 115 and all the random other media outlets that were taking our seats. So
cool.
Cheers.